The issues of people's interests are always discussed in the Parliament, and one such issue came up in the British Parliament. And this is what was in fact being discussed, where British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, it appears, did not pretty much comment on the ongoing farmers' protest in India during the weekly Prime Minister's question session in the House of Commons. And this is how British Prime Ministers actually take questions that are directly addressed to them. And it was a Labour Party Member of Parliament, Tanmanjeet Singh Deshi, who actually stood up in the House of Commons in Britain and raised the issue of farmers who are protesting in India about the controversial farm laws. And he wanted the British Prime Minister to say something about these protests and how there are also reports, according to Tanmanjeet Singh, that the farmers were not being allowed to come inside the capital and stage their protest. Listen in.
Those emanating from the Punjab and other parts of India and I were horrified to see footage of water cannon, tear gas and brute force being used against peacefully protesting farmers. However, it was heartwarming to see those very farmers feeding those forces who had been ordered to beat or suppress them. What indomitable spirit, and it takes a special kind of people to do that. So will the Prime Minister convey to the Indian Prime Minister our heartfelt anxieties, our hopes for a speedy resolution to the current deadlock, and does he agree that everyone has a fundamental right to peaceful protest?
Prime Minister.
Of course, Mr. Speaker, and our views, the right honourable gentleman knows, as the honourable gentleman knows well, is of course that we have serious concerns about what is happening between India and Pakistan, but these are preeminently matters for those two governments to settle, and I know that he appreciates that point.
All right, so the controversial farm laws that are being brought about in India are being discussed in the Parliament, but it is in the British Parliament that they are being discussed, and that was the response by the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, where he, it appeared, was not very aware of what was happening in the protests that are taking place. Now, many people are saying that it may not have been his ignorance about the protest, but rather a pretty smart diplomatic way of avoiding a pretty difficult question that was posed to him. Remember, the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, of course, has come out with some pretty strong comments saying that he's deeply concerned with the protests that are unfolding in India's national capital, on the outskirts of India's national capital. But unfortunately, this, of course, had led to a sort of a diplomatic situation. Trudeau had said that Canada will always stand up for the right of peaceful protest and human rights around the world. Now, India, of course, hit back immediately, and it said that ties between the two nations could get strained due to the comments that were being made by the Canadian Prime Minister, where he was expressing concern about the farmers' protest in India. Now, New Delhi, of course, maintains that these issues relating to Indian farmers constitute essentially just an internal matter of India, and Canada, ideally, should not be making any comments about it. Now, the British government so far has refused to be drawn into the ongoing protests in India, with the Foreign, Commonwealth and the Development Office saying that the matter of handling the protests is still an internal one in India.